Hi, everyone. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil, I'm up to you. Hey, in my haste, I forgot my music. So you'll have to forgive me as I go through the all the effects here. I mean, it's here. It's here somewhere. Let's see if it'll. Ah, of course. In my haste to be with you, I just how can I forget my music? Hey, it's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. This is Emil Amok's Takeout Live, show number 158. We've been here 158 times. Emil, don't you have anything else to do with your life? Well, yeah, I asked the question, what that? Uh, what does an Asian American think? I kind of fill the void here at Emil Amok's Takeout Live, not the podcast. I mean, Emil Amok, the podcast, you can get wherever you podcast, and you'll get a slightly different show. Well, let's hope so, Emil. God, this is a show? Well, yeah, this is just real. This is Emil for real, right? That's what it is. I mean, Emil for real, right here. But the podcast is, slightly more edited, and I talk to other people and I cram it in, and voila, Emil Amok's Takeout. We've been doing it for about 3-4 years, and doing some things now with Little Manila Rising. Check out what they're doing on the social justice front. So get that wherever you podcast. But this is live. I mean, you are here with the live dangerous version, the Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific live. And we're just putting it out there for you. And putting it out there for good reason. Because if we didn't, who would? I mean, we call this, what do we call this? We call this the micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs for good reason. Because we talk about us like we count, like we matter. See, now I got to get the gizmos working. Like I talk about the issues from our perspective. I put on the Asian American lenses. This is, my Asian American lenses. Or maybe these are the Asian American lenses. Hold on. And you can watch this on YouTube, or you can watch it on Twitter live. I put it on Twitter at Emil Amok, or maybe you're on Facebook. Are these the Asian American lenses? Oh, wow. Kind of Harry Potterish, I think. But no, I'll stick with these. These are kind of, I got to clean them. Oh, well, then they go with the other ones. They're just as good. For these, we prepared today with these Asian American lenses in mind. Anyway, the AAPI and the AAXs, my naming convention for Asian American acts, right? So we're all inclusive, of course, because it's a show for ALL, the alls. You're one of those folks, huh? The alls. The alls people. Everyone. You don't have to be Asian American to listen to this show because it's in English and because it's your issues too. So we talk about them. We talk about these issues like they matter. And if you tuned in, you know that because we're on at 2 p.m. Pacific Live, we have 3 minutes. It's only 1:57. Emil, you're so generous with your time. The lagniappe part. This is the lagniappe. We're giving you something extra. And today on the lagniappe part, because look, let me tell you what we're going to talk about coming up. We're going to talk about, COVID, NIH, the PETA podcast, baseball, the Giants and Dodgers tonight, Asian American baseball fans, both on the West Coast and the East Coast. They're going crazy, right? Because it's Giants and Dodgers. And they're playing to see who goes to the National League Championship Series and not to the World Series. That's a disappointment. We'll talk about that. William Shatner, we talked about him yesterday. We're going to talk about him more because, frankly, it's important to talk about William Shatner, what he saw. going up to space. But my point is it any different than what an immigrant saw in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and so forth and so on? Any different than what my father saw when he came across that boat across the Pacific? We'll get into that. Get into some of his baseball thoughts. I channeled with my dad. Because if I said I talked to him, you'd tell Emil, he's dead. You're crazy. No, I channeled him. He said the Giants are going to win. I'll explain later. I'm going to talk about jaywalking. Not that the comedian jaywalking kind of thing, but a kind of jaywalking that's a for real thing. And then we're going to do a meditation. I've always said I was going to do a meditation, but I am going to do a meditation today. At the end, you got to stick around to the end. Really, I mean, and you'll appreciate it. All right. Here's the lagniappe for today. I emailed, or not emailed it, but tweeted it out. Boston Globe report about Michelle Wu. They had a debate last night, Michelle Wu and her competitor, her closest competitor, just 32 points behind. Does it sound like we're going to have an Asian American female as mayor of one of the most populous cities in the nation? I mean, we've had Asian American female mayors. Jean Quan at Oakland, right? I think most notably. I'm sure there must be at least someone somewhere else, but she comes to mind, Jean Quan, just because I'm from the Bay Area. And I covered Jean Quan when she was on the school board. But Michelle Wu, oh my God. She is, she's putting it together. I mean, the woman who took over for the Mayor Walsh there was an African-American female, and they heralded her as the appointed first African-American to be mayor of Boston, heralded her, and what happened? She didn't do the job. She lost when she went out to seek the nomination of her party. Michelle Wu won, and now Michelle Wu is, as I said, 32 points ahead of her closest competitor. If you're not paying attention to the Boston mayoral race, you should. It's typical of a lot of cities, right? They have problems with education, problems with housing, and how Michelle Wu takes care of it. Because, look, I'm just presuming she's going to win. Because if you see the report on the debate, all she had to do is just show up and not blow it. And she would just maintain a 32-point margin of victory. The other person, whose name escapes me, but it's a hyphenated name, not a bad person, another member of the city council there, but she had to give a reason why Michelle Wu must be stopped because you want to make a claim that she wants to defund the police or, some kind of bogus claim like that? No, couldn't do it. So I think Michelle Wu, and the Asian American population in Boston is exploding. I have a kind of soft spot in my heart for Boston, even though I lived across the river in another town, where that school is, where we say when we're across the river in that town, we say, oh, yeah. And when we're in California, we say, oh, I went to school in Boston. Oh, Boston, the city? No, you're there. That's when you don't want to say the word that is copywritten. Now, you can't really say it without getting the express, or raising the ire of the legal minds over there at that big top university. Anyway, no, Michelle Wu is has all the pedigree, right? Harvard grad, Harvard Law, from Chicago. So she has a kind of an insider perspective. She comes in, she's a firebrand of the city council, and she came out of nowhere. She didn't really come out of nowhere, but she surprised the first female African-American appointed mayor, and now Michelle Wu looks to make history. I mean, that's the point. It's history in Boston, and it's happening, and so watch out for Michelle Wu. I mentioned Michelle Wu the other day And because I was talking about my friend David Chu, who was the assemblyman who now has become city attorney of San Francisco. Why would someone go from assembly to city attorney? Well, they get termed out, got to run again, or I think something happens. They got to switch jobs because of term limits. Or maybe he just wants to be a San Franciscan. I think with David Chu is David's too tactical, I think. I haven't talked to him, but my impression is city attorney, being the first Asian American city attorney of San Francisco, puts him in a better position maybe to be the mayor of San Francisco, which is somewhat problematic because there is a woman there now, an African American woman, who is the mayor, but maybe there's other things for her. I mean, this is politics, right? People are always looking for other jobs. And if I recall correctly, when David Chu was running for mayor, there was a deal struck between David Chu and Ed Lee, the man who did become mayor of San Francisco, who has now passed away. But I would suggest that were it not for that private deal that those two made, David Chu would be mayor of San Francisco. I think it's the job he really wanted. Being in the assembly is fine, but unless you see it as a route to something else, I don't know. Speculation. My speculation. That's what I could. That is my prerogative as a talk show host of this micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs. I get to talk stuff, but this is a somewhat informed analysis. Good luck to David Chu, but also good luck to Michelle Wu in Boston. I mentioned Michelle Wu and David Chu together because they both have similar kinds of pedigrees. Although David is from Hingham, Mass., he did go to Harvard. He did go to Harvard Law. He made his name in San Francisco, where apparently he also left his heart because he went to the assembly and is now back in the city as city attorney. I think he wants to be mayor of San Francisco. We know that Michelle Wu is going to be mayor of Boston. Asian American political progress there. All right, as long as we're talking about assembly and, who does what in the assembly, Phil Ting, former San Francisco supervisor, then went to the assembly. What do you do with the assembly? You write bills, you create laws. Phil Ting was really big on what was called the Freedom to Walk Act. It's what I call the AA, Asian American Jaywalker Act. I mean that with much affection. The AA Jaywalkers Act, the Freedom to Walk Act. Because did you know that you can walk in the city or jaywalk anywhere? They did this in LA. Black people make up 9% of the population in LA, but they were 31% of the people stopped by the Los Angeles Police Department for jaywalking from 2018 to 2020. How does that happen? A little bit of the numbers don't add up, right? 9% of the population, 31% of the people arrested for jaywalking. That's a kind of inequity. Black people, people of color, always, when it comes to Latinx, that's the old trope. People are stopped because they've got a busted taillight, a reason to stop people and ask for their papers to see if they have warrants. Well, if you don't have a vehicle because of the economic times, jaywalking. Jaywalking is a form of harassment. And, Phil Ting, when he put together this legislation, he said that the jaywalking laws were outdated, not enforced fairly. And really, when you think about how cities are made up, how cities are devised, why do they have crosswalks in places that don't make sense, or crosswalks where you have to walk like 3 blocks to get across 1 block, and now you're adding another 3 and another 6 blocks across the street? it doesn't add up. People say, oh, heck with it, I'm going to jaywalk. And then you do. And you know you jaywalk if you live in the city. And when I lived in the city, I jaywalked all the time. I remember specifically as a young boy jaywalking. Is that strange? I lived on, fairly busy streets. Fulton Street in San Francisco. I stayed with an aunt briefly on Oak Street. Those are busy damn streets. And you're waiting. You don't want to walk up the hill and take the light and walk down. You just want to okay, no one's there. And you dart across. And you just cross your fingers and hope you don't get hit. That was a form of exercise when you're growing up poor in San Francisco. I'm just saying, jaywalking, instead of enforcing these outdated laws, why don't they design better urban areas where people can cross safely and can just cross at crosswalks and be protected from traffic? I mean, these are all ancillary things, but what the Freedom to Walk Act, it would get rid of the penalties for jaywalking. And it was logical enough and reasonable enough to pass, the legislature. Because just imagine the penalties for jaywalking. Some people had $1,000 in jaywalking fines. Some of them were jaywalking to catch a bus. So we're not talking about a real criminal thing. We're talking about something that is an imposition on regular people. So Phil Ting had this law, or this bill, that passed the California legislature. And darn it, it was on Gavin Newsom's desk. And did the governor sign it? We were waiting all last week. The word came down, no, he did not sign it. He did not sign the jaywalking act. I mentioned this law because it should have been signed. And number two, the biggest proponents of this, even though the stats were citing, the number of times black people were caught jaywalking, the biggest proponents were the LA group, which is run by an Asian American, and Phil Ting, Assemblyman Phil Ting from San Francisco. Well, they're going to do it again, but look up, Google the Freedom to Walk Act. It should have been passed this time, but it looks like it's just going to have to go through the cycle. Everyone knows legislation, knows you don't give up. You just keep going. Think about the Filipino American veterans of World War II who were fighting, for years, decades. People were dying. And then finally, 2009, Obama got it into a budget package and got a compromise for the Filipino American vets of World War II. I try to sneak in the Filipino American history. I mean, this is Filipino American History Month, for goodness sakes. I'm going to sneak it in. Going to sneak in that Filipino American history. This is the part of October where we dovetail, not for very much longer. Hispanic Heritage Month ends on the 15th, and then it's all Filipino American History Month on our own. Anyway, so there's our lanyap, a little lanyap. And of course, lanyap always spills over, right? You go to your favorite restaurant, and the cook says, oh, I like these guys or gals or whatever. The waiter sends over like a little basket of something. Oh, this is from the chef. He likes you guys. Here, lanyap, which is not Tagalog. I only make it sound Tagalog. It actually is French for little something extra. A New Orleans kind of thing. But, there were Filipinos, the Bad Saint folks, the Saint Malo folks. They were from another bit of Filipino American history. Oh, my God, Emil. So you're dropping that Filipino American history all over the place. Lanyap. So this is one of the things I want to add for our lanyap here on our show. It's Filipino American History Month. People say, Emil, forget about the history. Well, don't forget about the history. Give me the history, but give me the three largest Asian origin groups by state. Tell me where the Filipinos are today. And I'm going to do that. Here are the largest, because you're saying, Emil, bring me up to date. History's fun, but bring me up to date. Okay. Here are the largest Filipino states. Alaska, 51% of the state's Asian population. In Alaska, Filipino. That's right. That's right. And they're all addicted to whale blubber. But I'm trying to make them go vegan. I'm going to try to make them go vegan up there. Another state. Here's another state. Idaho. 23% of the state's population in Idaho are the Asian American population. In Idaho, Filipino. The number one Asian group in Idaho. You're wondering why those brown potatoes look brown? Could be the Filipino influence. I just saw something interesting about Idaho on CNN. The doctor there said, look, we've blown it. We've lost the war. We're only 46% vaccinated in Idaho versus 60 something around the nation. Much more so in California. It just shows you how different the COVID experience is based on, where you are. But in Idaho, only like 40, like in the 40s, 42% vaccinated. I hope that of the Asian American population in Idaho, 23%, the largest Asian American group in Idaho, Filipino, I hope they're all vaccinated. But as I said, now you know why. Think Idaho, think of brown potatoes, and think of them as saying, "Oh, salamat, salamat." Okay, that's my dad channeling me again. Here's another state. Number one Asian American group in this state, Filipino, Montana. God, we like the Wild West, I guess, or we like that kind of cowboy Idaho, Montana thing. Big sky, big Filipino, I guess. Montana. More Filipino. Number one Asian American group in this state, Filipino, 52%. Nevada. And I'm not kidding you when I say, who's going to clean those hotel rooms? Who's going to, work the casino tables? The hotel restaurant workers. Filipinos. Amazing, huh? 52% of the Asian American population in Nevada. Filipino. Here's another one. With 22%, the largest Asian American contingent, Filipino, New Mexico. That's right. Breaking Bad. All the customers in that car wash were Filipino. Or the Asian ones. The Asian ones, maybe. A couple more. 19%, the largest Asian American group in this state. It is South Dakota. Come on, South Dakota. Wall drugs. Probably a good place to, meet your Filipino friends. South Dakota. I only know wall drugs from seeing it in, when you're on the road, you see their bumper stickers. But it's also a matter of Nomadland, the movie, right there at wall drugs. South Dakota. Now, if South Dakota, could it be? Yes. With 20%, the largest Asian American group, Filipino. North Dakota. Give North Dakota a hand. My God. North and South Dakota. We are the twin towers of Asian America in the Dakotas. Filipinos. Kind of amazing when you think of it, huh? One more. Are you ready for one more? One more. With 21%. The largest Asian American group in this state. Filipino. West Virginia. Come on, Filipinos. Go out there and get Joe Manchin to get up to speed. West Virginia. That's right. West Virginia Filipinos. I knew that as I drove from Maryland to my in-laws in Ohio, and we go through West Virginia, and you go through Wheeling, I just had that funny, I can feel the adobo in the air. I just had that funny feeling. I just, anyway, those are the top Filipino places. If you're saying, oh, Emil, yeah, thanks. Oh, I don't believe you. No, no, this is the Pew Research Center. This is their analysis. And there's a number of states where Filipinos are number two. And we'll get to that on a subsequent date. But the number two and the number three, where Filipinos come up, because people say, I didn't know there were that many of you guys here. Yeah, there is. There are. There are. And I'll get to the number two and number three at some point in the future. I mentioned the COVID numbers in Idaho, where Filipinos are the most numerous. Let me mention also that the latest PETA podcast, which I also host, I got to mention it because PETA called for the resignation, or more directly, the firing of Dr. Francis Collins. And he accommodated by saying, hey, he's going to go out by the end of the year. Maybe he saw the light. Maybe he saw that things were going down. But Francis Collins, it's a good thing. If you want to know why it's a good thing he went, well, consider this. None of the vaccines that came out because of, COVID came out of research or came out of anything to do with funding from NIH, the National Institutes of Health. And the National Institutes of Health, that is the prime responsibility of the NIH to fund these things that will give us the cures that we need, give America the kinds of things that it needs to be healthy and safe. But NIH has been falling down on the job because for the last at least 10 years, Francis Collins has been at the helm since like 2009. He was appointed by Obama. But the point is, they knew back then that animal experimentation was not effective. And they were all ready to like flip the switch and say, no more animal testing if we really want to be effective, because 90% of all the things that, you run animal tests through, they just don't result in any kind of human cures or any kind of benefit for mankind, because species are different. Well, for 10 years, we've been frozen in time. Like what they knew in 2009 was irrelevant, and NIH kept testing on animals. America's falling behind. And it's time for something called the research modernization deal that Europe is accepting. And so listen to the PETA podcast and figure out why, or understand why, the retirement of Francis Collins. He didn't resign. The retirement of Francis Collins is a good thing. And especially for those Filipinos in Idaho who are suffering from COVID. Like I said, their vaccination rate is only like 42%. Anyway, when we come back, I'm going to talk baseball, talk about why the Giants are going to win tonight. They are. They're going to win tonight. I'm going to revisit William Shatner. I'm going to talk about baseball. I'm going to talk about the Giants. And we're going to meditate. But first, let me bring in a friend of mine. It is Filipino American History Month. He joined us last week. Daniel Phil Gonzales. How are you? You're on?
We're good. Thank you.
We're good. Hey, so I bring Daniel Phil on because Dr. Daniel Phil is, in my book, I don't want to say that, look, in my book, you are Mr. Filipino American History. And at least you're on the team that brought about ethnic studies at San Francisco State in 1968. And so I think you don't get enough credit for that. And I appreciate what you did all those many years. And I always think it's important to hear what you have to say. So thanks, Dan, for being here.
Thank you. You know, because I have a JD and not a PhD,
Mhm.
the doctor label gets contested a lot. And so some campuses that really dote on the distinction between the two absolutely they wouldn't just balk, they would not affirm the doctor status. So professor's fine, but
Okay, all
I
right.
appreciate the gesture.
Well,
Appreciate the
okay.
gesture.
So we need to understand that visas matter in the academic world. You have
Hey, they
and you
do.
have the wrong. You,
They
clearly,
do.
you have the wrong visa.
Oh no, people dote on the label names. Obviously, they trip all over themselves with your Harvard pedigree
Oh
and
no, I try to down. I'm
Berkeley.
trying to downplay
You
it.
know, Berkeley gets. They really guard themselves and are really proud. There's now at least two generations of younger academics that come from the Ivy League schools and from Berkeley and Stanford. They really dote on it, and
Well, that's yeah. It's a
you know,
kind of
then the question that comes up is, can they teach? And the answer in too many instances is no, they can't. They're not very
I,
good.
well. See, this is the thing. I think it counts that you were first in that group that created the College of Ethnic Studies at San Francisco State, and I bring you on. I know your time is short, so let's go for
Yeah,
15 minutes.
let's do it. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I just want to. It's Filipino American History Month, and when you
Yes,
want to talk to people about Filipino American history, oh look, let me talk about this. Did you see This Is Life with Lisa Ling? Because I've been talking about her all week. I like Lisa Ling. She did a thing on Vincent Chin, her
right.
premiere show
I did
on.
not.
Well, you can catch it, and as I point out, so I'm not, you know, I don't have any animus toward Lisa Ling and her show. I point out you can go to Amazon and you can buy the thing, not rent it, but buy the thing for like $1.99 or something. But my point is, she did a whole thing about Vincent Chin, Asian
Hmm.
American history, important. I actually thought she interviewed Helen Zia. I thought it was one of the better explanations of the Chin case because it really dwelled on the economic impact of the Japanese auto industry on the auto workers in Detroit.
Yes,
And that's something that most people just kind of like brush through in a paragraph and say, yeah, there was this, but yeah, then this white guy beat the heck out of Vincent Chin and killed him. And if you understand the the economic situation, it really begins to put Vincent Chin in a whole new light. So I enjoyed it for that. So people should see it for that. My my problem with what Lisa Ling did is as she tries to connect it all with the Stop AAPI hate thing and the instances of Asian
hmm
hate now, she goes over the history and said, here's the history. And this is where you come in because they always start with the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882
right.
and they go right into the internment and 9066 executive order 9066 1941 Japanese Americans interned, and then that's the history. Exclusion, internment, that's it. Like nothing happened between 1882 and 1941, and those were the big Filipino parts.
And Indian.
And Indian, okay,
Yeah.
I we all have our little blind spots based on our own ethnicity, but yeah,
Well,
Indian, but no,
thankfully, the reason that we could connect Indians and Filipinos is because there were signs all over Northern California and parts of the West saying no Hindus or Filipinos allowed. You know, so they
I
joined both of us.
I
Some
didn't
of them
know
said
that.
no dogs in Filipinos, but you know,
Yeah. I didn't know that about the connection between the Hindus. I knew that there was some exclusion with the Hindus,
right.
but what tell me more about the sign.
There are a couple of connections. One of them is that they both groups were targets of racial exclusion and outright racism. But also, there were Hindus who started farming, and like the Japanese Americans, Japanese farmers, before the internment of World War II, they operated farms and they hired Filipinos. So there's a point of conflict, as there was between Filipinos and Japanese farm owners, because the Filipinos were the workers, right? And the same thing was true of that relationship with Hindu farm owners or Indian farm owners. Hindu is kind of a misnomer, but
Right. But
yeah.
but then yeah. So that it was kind of like there was a race thing that brought us together, but the class thing
Yes,
where there were owners and there were
that's
laborers,
right.
the Filipinos were the laborers.
That's right.
That that was an intra-ethnic, um,
Intraracial,
intra-racial
right? And in
hotspot.
intraracial and interethnic. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, all right. So the Filipinos. So, like I said, Lisa, I just point out in my latest ALDEF column that, hey, it's okay to go straight from Chinese exclusion to internment, but you leave out a lot of racial animosity toward Filipino Americans.
No, it's an excellent point, and it's repeated over and over and over again. And quite frankly, ethnic studies very often reflects that omission
Yeah,
all over the country. So I wrote an article that's supposed to be in an encyclopedic publication. I don't know if they're going to use it or not, um, but it was an article written on the history of Asians in America, and it was about Asian American as a concept, you know, meaning the notion of American as a uh, an aggregate term that's supposed to include all of the Asian populations in the United States, and that's very complex, right? Because those 30 years, you've got more than 20 different Asian ethnic groups that have immigrated to the United States, and
yeah,
so it's
or more.
huge.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
you all the Southeast Asian communities, and you count the South Asian communities, you
right.
count
It
that.
depends on how you. That's exactly right. So if
Yeah,
you
you
are
count,
very specific about ethnic differences, especially differences in origin in Asia, you get way more than 20, right? But my point
yeah,
is, it's an East Asian factor. So ever since the beginning of ethnic studies and Asian American studies specifically, there has always been a bias towards two groups, particularly, and that was Chinese and Japanese. Eventually, they added Korean, but they're also East Asian, right? And
and they're
so
also less numerous than Indian and Filipino.
that's right. And so we're in the news all the time in the period that you're citing, right?
Yeah,
One because of the colonial war that the United States was waging in the Philippines, and then and that's how National Geographic and magazines like that, right,
yeah,
started to become popular fare in American households, and one of the featured groups was Filipinos, and they
yeah,
loved showing the least advanced, right, cultural groups in the Philippines as being indicators of the savagery, right, and primitiveness of Filipinos. So there's that. Then there's also the First and Second World Wars, especially the Second World War, and then the attempt to defend, right, the MacArthur plan. He was looking ahead and looking at the militarization of Japan and their expansion in Asia. It was easy to predict. You know, any person interested in international relations and global affairs could see the need, right, for developing a military strategy for the United States in the Pacific.
Yeah.
MacArthur wanted to do that, and in the midst of his rather feeble attempt, right, to strengthen the military defense capability of the Philippines, we got attacked, and that was the beginning. On the same day, right, the same day as the attack on Pearl Harbor. But do the history books mention the Philippines? Yeah,
Oh,
within 12 hours.
yeah.
Within 12 hours, right? The attack
Yeah.
on the there's only a 12-hour separation between the two attacks,
Yeah.
and we
Well,
don't get
yeah,
mentioned.
yeah. I mean, they went after the Philippines after Pearl Harbor.
Right,
Yeah, and that's something that people don't understand when they see some of the reaction of Filipinos in America, which was very anti-Japanese
right,
in California specifically. But
right,
to go back to that period, 1882, the end of Chinese exclusion, to the internment, 1941. When you jump over that void, it's almost like Americans don't want to get into the complexity
right,
and don't want to get into the fact that it makes Americans look even worse than they are by naming the exclusion and the internment. It just is. It almost seems like piling on, but it does seem like an exclusion of Filipinos because, as you point out, it's the Spanish American War, the Philippine American War, and the racism toward Filipinos, the first to come over as colonized Americans to California, and the de facto exclusion of them by way of the Tidings McDuffie Act in 1934. So there's all sorts of things that happen that, if you do the shorthand, exclusion, internment, that's it. We should feel bad. Oh, you should feel worse if you knew the Filipino parts.
sure. Well, none of the other Asian groups were subjected to, for example, the Repatriation Act, and so that puts Filipinos on the map right in the middle of the period that you're talking about. It's a 1930s repatriation, right? And so that's kind of an exclusive status that we have, and I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know that even Filipinos. You say Americans don't want to see it and hear it, and I think a lot of Filipinos don't want to hear it.
Well, there's a kind of shame thing that goes on
Yes, it is.
when you're asked to repatriate. You come here seeking your fortune, even though you're colonized, but then now suddenly you're going back to the Philippines. That's a point of shame, which is why it was all voluntary. That's the
Right.
other thing that makes it kind of weird. It's voluntary, or it's self deportation essentially,
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
and it just
Well, it would be unconstitutional if they forced this out. That
right.
was the problem. So they had to make it voluntary.
But
But then
they
people aren't having a problem being unconstitutional these days.
these
So,
no, not these days. In fact,
yeah.
self deportation was sort of the thing they offered it. Just the last 5 years to people to go back home.
Yep.
But, if people realize that, oh, they did this with the Filipinos who were here. It's a part of our history and an important part. I just, for me, especially during Filipino American History Month, if Lisa Ling's "This Is Life with Lisa Ling" on Vincent Chin had a run at any other time, I don't think I would have been as sensitive. But coming right in the month of October
Right.
and on my birthday yet,
Oh,
I just thought, look, uh, I loved what she did with Vincent Chin, but I'll take her to task on the Filipino history parts. And so, all right, so there's a lot happening. It's worth mentioning. What other now the other thing that I'll have you back on next week to talk about October 18th, because when October 15th happens, Filipino American history no longer shares with Hispanic Heritage Month, and now it's all hours between October 15th and the 31st,
yeah. Yeah.
and when
But
Halloween, where we're wearing.
Some Filipinos can celebrate under both, right? That marginal 2 week period. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that's one of
I'm
the
sure
things.
you get a lot of Latinx mail, right? I get all kinds of Latinx mail, but yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, when you have a Spanish last name, it's people will just assume, well, you must be, and then no, actually, when I use the Amok, uh, people think I'm my last name is Mock, M-O-K, and they think
Well, they think you're Chinese. Yeah.
yeah, they think my name is Emila, Emila, and then M-O-K.
So they gender you, they
Yeah,
misgender you, or yeah,
yeah, they
they
misgender
feminize
me.
you.
They feminize. Well, and that was a thing with Filipinos, right? To be feminized and infantilized and ostracized. We get all
Yeah,
we get sized down a lot.
yeah, it's true. I kept on saying, well, I say it in my classes, right? I wish they would just make up their mind. If they're going to be racist and they infantilize the men, and then on the other hand, they say that we're oversexed, and they get all upset because we were dating and marrying white women.
Yeah,
So, years before the Loving case, 1967, we had the Roldan case, right?
yeah,
And the Yatko cases in the 1930s. And there were split opinions among the judges in California. And in fact, the Roldan case was decided by a Los Angeles court, and they permitted a Filipino to marry a white woman because he claimed all you got to do is look at my name, Roldan. It's I got a lot of heavy Spanish ancestry, and I'm a particular kind of Filipino. I'm an Ilocano, and he's claiming that Ilocanos are way different from other Malays and we're not Asian, we're not
yeah.
Chinese, we're not Japanese. So
Well, this is the thing that Ron Takaki, the noted historian, the late historian who taught at Berkeley, said, and he's sort of like the dean among the Berkeley academics of Asian American history. He would point out that in the Anti-Miscegenation Acts, the Filipinos were far more gregarious than the other Asians, and
yes,
they were feared because there weren't as many race mixings between the Chinese and the Japanese. It was really the Filipinos that they feared.
well,
That's
if
what.
there was, they kept it on the down low. They really were very surreptitious about it. The Filipinos, as you state, and basically quoting Professor Takaki, where you you said they were gregarious, which is true.
Yeah,
But yeah, they were quite obvious about it, particularly when it came to the populations, the favored populations at the dance halls, at the
yeah.
taxi dance halls. Yeah,
The Filipinos were the dancers. We had our own little we came with our own little
yeah,
salsa step.
still
So
are, still
yeah,
are.
I know. So, well, Dan, look, I want to talk about next time you're on. I want to talk about 1587, but I want to get to some other topics because you only. I call this the micro talk show with the
Okay.
API and the AXs, and but you can hang around, you can like comment, or you can laugh at when I say something funny. I want to talk. I want to talk about the tonight's baseball game,
Okay.
the Giants and the Dodgers. I'm not going because COVID. I mean, I could go. I I have gotten to prefer just watching it in the comfort of my home, where I cannot replicate that experience in a ballpark where I must use the bathroom with a trough, with like 50 men waiting in line to use the bathroom because they drunk too many $20 beers. So I'm going to stay home and watch it. But the late word is that Corey Knebel is going to pitch for the Dodgers instead of Urias,
Oh,
who
that's interesting.
yeah, Urias was fearful or was could have been feared because he's 21 game winner or whatever 20 game winner. He's just a good pitcher, but the Giants have beaten him all three times previously. And so maybe they say the Dodgers said we're going to throw Knebel at the Giants because he's good. Giants don't know him and we know Logan Webb, and so we'll beat them. I think maybe that's the thinking. But the Giants are going to go with Logan Webb. But knowing that I was worried when they were going with Urias. Now that they're going with Knebel, a little more confident that maybe the Giants prevail tonight.
Got to
What do
get
you
the
think?
bats going. Got to get the bats going. You know, they
Well,
had all kinds of opportunities to score in the two games that they lost,
yeah.
and they left people on base a lot.
Like that is a case with the Giants, though. Although, look, you're like the second most home runs, hit, amongst teams in the Major League Baseball. They got to start playing like that. They got to start, they got
Yeah,
to start hitting more home runs,
with
because
with people on base. You know,
oh yeah,
they hit a lot of solo home runs. You know.
yeah, they do. But look, I'll just take a home run because one home run equals, like, for the Giants, two hits, two or three hits.
Hmm.
And right now they're playing like the 2012 and 2014 Giants, where um, they're getting ground ball RBIs, they're getting double play
Right,
RBI
right.
or fielder's choice RBI. So I'd like to, one thing though, with Logan Webb there, I'm no longer fearful that the Giants don't have the pitching. I think they have the pitching now. They can
Hmm.
go after the Dodgers, and they both have won 109 games. So let this be uh, the battle for the 110th that goes into the National League Championship Series, and let that be the Giants. So I I feel confident. I was channeling my father. My father, was your father this way too? When the Giants came, he always had a transistor radio.
58. Yeah,
I mean, a transistor radio was the technology of the day. And for
sure.
those of you who don't know transistor radios, it was like, right now you would consider it a doorstop. It's just a plastic thing. Because no one listens to radio. You can't get podcasts from a transistor radio. A transistor radio picks up the free radio frequencies that are all
Right.
around, and you can pick up AM radio and FM radio. It was fantastic. And all the old Filipino guys in my
You had to
father's
pay
family.
extra for FM.
Oh, that's
The,
right.
originally, they were just AM, and
The
then when
Pilcos. You get the Pilco AM because that's all you need. Because no one was on FM.
right, right.
Only some hippies. Some hippies were on FM.
Right. And yeah, that's
Hippies,
kind of true.
hippies and
Some
religious people.
music stations because FM could go stereo. So
Yeah,
when stereo became the technology, the desirable technology, then FM radio became hip, especially for music. You know.
yeah. And that's where the rise of the old KSAN came about, and all the old underground stations. But here's the thing: when I think of baseball, I think of my dad. I think of him in with his transistor radio. And I think of baseball as the immigrants' game because of him, because that was America for him.
Yep.
That was how he felt a part of this country. And that was so real to me that, I mean, baseball is everything. I mean, I was with him on the last day of his life at a Giants game. I write this essay, I put it out every Father's Day, where we go to the ballpark, the Giants win, top of the ninth or the bottom of the ninth, they win. And then we go back home, and he has a heart attack and he dies. Baseball has always meant, Giants baseball has always meant something. And it really, and now baseball really is one of the most diverse sports around. It's got Latinos, it's got Asians, it's got whites, it's got some half Filipinos. Travis d'Arnaud is half Filipino. Do you know that? The catcher for the Braves. Tim Lincecum for the Giants. He
Right.
was half Filipino. But no, and I just think,
There was a person who played for the Padres for the Pods, and
uh,
I'm forgetting his last name, but he's also half Filipino. I grew up with his. I spent my childhood with his mother, so that's how I know. But
well, see, you spent enough time with her to forget her son's name, or maybe it was your son.
her married name. I
Oh,
remember. I remember. You know
the
her
pod
maiden. What is it? What is the term?
maiden,
Yeah,
the
maiden. I
maiden,
know, but that's so. It
right?
sounds so misogynistic. You know what I mean?
The
You know,
maiden
in so
name.
many
Well,
ways. Yeah, maiden
anyway,
name. Yeah.
So look, so the baseball, I'll be watching baseball tonight. I'll be hoping for the Giants, and let's hope that on Friday there'll be something to celebrate. I told my friends that I'm sorting out my lucky clothes, trying to figure out which clothes have luck in them. I wash the ones that have bad luck. I wear
Oh,
the ones
see, that's the magic word to wash.
that
See, a lot of people don't wash them.
you got to wash the magic clothes. I mean, if they're
Yeah,
going to be
yeah.
magic, they got to wash.
Well, that's see that they're of the opposite view. You don't want to wash away the luck,
Yeah,
right?
you don't want to wash.
So
Well, you got to get new luck. Get the new luck in. All right, now look. Did
right.
you see William Shatner fly up into the space?
Yes, yes. I saw the way he was quite fearful floating around too much, but
Yeah.
he didn't
No,
enjoy that part.
he wanted to look. He said he wanted to look at
Yeah,
the
that's right. He really
outside while
was
everyone. But now look,
absolutely engrossed.
on yesterday's show, I played the clip of him saying what he said, which was rather poetic. Today, I have a clearer version. I just want to play a little bit of this. Here's William Shatner.
And it's so thin, and you're
Oh,
through it in an inch.
so thin. He's talking about the blue layer of the
Yep,
Earth's atmosphere, our
atmosphere.
air, our blue sky, and he's talking about how thin it is.
It's what a how thick is it?
I mean, the atmosphere.
Is it a mile? 2
No,
miles?
I mean, it depends on how you measure because it thins out like maybe 50 miles. Not even.
But you're going
Yeah.
2,000 miles an hour, so you're through 50 miles. Whatever the mathematics
fast.
are.
Yeah, really
It's
fast.
like a beat and a beat, and suddenly you're through the blue,
And then it's
and you're into black, and you're into, it's mysterious and galaxies and things, but what you see is black, and what you see down there is light, and that's the difference. And not to have this, you have done something. I mean, whatever those other guys are doing, what isn't, I don't know about that. What you have given me is the most profound experience I can imagine. I'm so filled with emotion about what just happened. It's extraordinary, extraordinary.
They hug
I
you.
hope I never recover from this. I hope that I can maintain what I feel now. I don't want to lose it. It's so much larger than me and life. And it hasn't got anything to do with the little green planet, the blue orb, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the enormity and the quickness and the suddenness of life and death oh my.
And that's William Shatner. I remember waking up hearing that because I got up late yesterday when he gets out of the capsule and he's talking to Bezos and they have this hugging thing and he goes into these raptures. I played a little bit yesterday. It was a little scratchy. I had a little better version here, but I was really I'm not ordinarily a let's go to space guy. I'm ordinarily a let's spend some money here on the problems here. But
Yep.
I kind of, I was struck by his poetic, statements about what he saw. Life and death, it's black. It's life is there and we're at the earth and we don't treat it well. And there's the darkness, it's black. And anyway, I just thought I was taken. How about were you taken by it, Dan?
Sure. Yes, I was. I I was taken by the degree of emotion
Yeah.
that the experience caused in him, um, and I thought he was trying as best he could to express it in philosophical terms. Um, but the absolutism of darkness and death, blackness and death, and then the lights down below was kind of scary to me, because it was not because it wasn't poetic, but it was so absolute,
And real. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the present danger that we face.
Yes.
And if we don't understand it and then we don't realize that we have to deal with it, you know, the urgency is there. And I'm just, I was never really a big Shatner fan. Never a big Star Trek fan. I thought it was kind of a stunt that he went up there, but he redeemed himself by being the actor he is and being a creative that he is, and then coming out down here and to be able to explain what he saw. And although, and this is something I'm curious what you would say, because I've always said this about space tourism and space exploration. I say it holds nothing. It doesn't hold a candle to what my father and your father experienced when they came from the Philippines and crossed the Pacific and looked for something, some kind of life form in America. And, you know, you can go, I mean, they didn't have to leave space, but our fathers, but they came here and it might as well have been another universe. It might as well
Sure.
have been another galaxy. And that was just as tough and took more courage. And unlike the space tourists who essentially are in a $250,000 bungee jump, they don't get to go back to a previous life, right? They got to make do. I mean, the immigrants, it just reminded me of the immigrant experience and how valuable that is, and how it's like space exploration here on Earth. So
Yeah, it's a different way of measuring risk. You know.
it is risk. Definitely,
Yeah.
it's all about
And,
risk.
yeah, and the difference is that these flights aren't they're not real astronauts because they're not in outer space, right? They're
Right.
sort of in that marginal area between our atmosphere and space. And the level of risk and the reason for the risk is nowhere like what people are going through to get across the southern border, for example.
Oh yeah. I mean,
And
if you're Haitian, if you're
well, right
coming,
now, if you're anybody trying to come across that southern border, you're at serious risk. And
no.
last week, the 1,000 kids that still
Oh
haven't
yeah,
been reunited. There may be more. So they admit, and
yeah,
it's we're at a we're at a really multiplying set of crossroads. You know, one of the things that people are really obsessed with these days in academia is intersectionality, right?
right, right.
Right now, the multiplicity of
That's
intersections.
yeah. Well, that's why you have to jaywalk. Got to get out of the intersection. Got to think out of the box. That's
Okay,
why. That's why Phil Ting's jaywalking thing wasn't a bad deal, but
right.
it got voted down. But yeah, look, I appreciate you saying that and making the link between what Bezos did and the risk that exists today, just as it existed when our fathers came across. But Dan, we've come to that point where I must say thank you and bid you farewell till next time. I'll be in
Okay,
touch. Thank you very much. Have a continued happy Filipino American History Month, and go Giants.
go Giants.
Okay. All
Okay,
right,
we'll see
there he
you
is.
later, man. Have a good
Professor
one.
Daniel Phil Gonzales, my friend, San Francisco State University. He was there at the beginning, 1968, College of Ethnic Studies, Filipino American History, Asian American History. I always like to talk to Dan because he knows it. He's my friend. He knows it. So now we are going to do our meditation. I promised you a meditation, and darn it, I'm going to give you a meditation. This is to help reduce anxiety. You got anxiety about the Giants tonight? Or maybe you're a Dodger fan. So start, you can have your eyes open, like I have my eyes open now. You can stand up, just relax your body. Soften any unnecessary tension in your belly and shoulder. But my shoulders look so good if they're back. No, just soften your shoulders. Find a posture that feels relaxed and alert. That's the contradiction. I'm relaxed and alert. So you can look forward, close your eyes if you want, or look downwards. You can rest your hands in a mudra. Kind of mudra. Take a few moments to scan your awareness to all the sensations of your body. Feel your body. Feel where there's any kind of sensation, maybe from the bottom of your feet, if you're standing like I am, through your legs. Body scan. Being aware of your body breathing. Maybe you're breathing just in your face. Maybe you're breathing your full body, from your diaphragm, your stomach. With your chest rising, being filled up with air, holding it at the top and then letting it go. Or maybe your breath is just right here in your face. Breathe in, 4 count. Hold it for 2. Breathe out. 6 count. After those breaths, imagine yourself standing outside of your house with 2 heavy suitcases. And one is a suitcase that's full of worries about the future. And the other is a suitcase full of regrets about the past. I know you're asking, well, which one has the clean underwear, Emil? Forget the underwear. It's just one is full of worries about the future, and the other is full of worries about the past. The clean underwear part, that's a current worry. So now take a moment. You're standing there in the street holding these. You're in the street. Hopefully it's not a busy one. You're holding these heavy suitcases. Reflect about each one. The future, how it will come on its own accord. Whenever it comes. And that maybe most of what we worry about will never happen. I mean, do you really need to bring that heavy coat? It may only get to like a low of 70, 60 maybe. Standing out there in the street, look at the other suitcase and reflect about the past. Consider how you can't change the past. All we can do in the present is to learn from it. Put in corrections that make sense. Correct the errors, the mistakes. Become better, become more skillful, become a better person, move on, right? Or is there something hanging on there in that suitcase of the past? Maybe not guilt, but maybe shame. So you're standing there in the street, you're feeling the weight of both of these. And, like maybe you're like me, you're a Libran, and you got the scales going, and you're teeter-tottering. But absorb the wisdom of your own reflections right now, and consider making a decision. Do you want to drop the suitcase of the future? to carry it? If you don't want it, just take that suitcase of the future and just simply drop it. You don't need that heavy coat. And standing there in the street with the other suitcase, which is like heavy with all this past stuff. I mean, you don't even fit those clothes anymore. Make a conscious decision. Do you want to drop it? So just drop it. And now you're standing there. Just you. No suitcases. And from the street, walk into your home. Take your seat right where you are. Plop down. Relax. Wait for the Giants game to come on. It's like you're coming home from a long trip, right? You just drop the suitcases and you're just relaxing. And you're resting in the present, just breathing. You're resting in the natural well-being of what they call the parasympathetic nervous system. And you're resting in the fundamental well-being of awareness. Awareness which does not worry or regret. Resting as if this is meaningful rest. You're doing nothing. And that's good. Feeling a sense of peace, of joy, of well-being. It's a natural happiness. Remember this. This is your home. Your true home. Without the heavy suitcases of worries about the future or full of regrets about the past. Simply rest in your body right now with the relaxation throughout your body, throughout your mind, and just be present. And when you're ready, you can bring your attention right here to where you are, to my voice. If your eyes are open, good. If your eyes were closed, open them up. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Emil Amok's Takeout Live, number 158. What does an Asian American do? That's what we call it. What that? We fill the void. Contact me at emil@amok.com, emil@amok.com. Emil Guillermo is Emil Amok. You can follow me on Twitter. Maybe on Twitter you are watching this now. At Emil Amok, EMILAMOK. You can also follow me on Facebook, emilguillermo.media, amok.com. I like to say, hey, be here. Bang the gong now. See the replays on amok.com and read my columns. Read my columns at, where's that? Where can you read my columns? Oh, at ALDEF, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, aldef.org/blog. Yeah. Thanks a lot for listening to Emil Amok, number 158, 159 tomorrow. We'll talk about stuff, maybe even a Giants victory. Yeah. That would be great. That would be great. If you made it this far, thank you very much. Really, thank you for joining us. Let me end by saying this one little meditation. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Mahal Kita.